Namaskar, everyone. Um, you weren't expecting me here, were you? No, not quite. Okay. We'll begin by a prayer. Gananatva Ganapatigum Havamahe Kavim Kavina Mupamashravastamam Jyeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Anam Shunvannotipisida Sadhanam Prano Devi Saraswati Vajebhirvajinivati Dhinamavitriyavatu Ganeshaya Namah Saraswatyai Namah Shri Gurubhyo Namah Hari Om Shanti Shanti. Okay, welcome everyone to this session on Vedic astrology, popularly known as Jyotish, or rather, in our circles we know it as Vedanga Jyotish, but it's actually everybody is more familiar with the term Vedic astrology, right? Is everyone familiar with the term? Yes? No? No? Not at all? Oh my God, you're all newbies here. Oh my God. Okay. So, one of the key things about Vedic astrology, and we call it Vedanga Jyotish, okay? It is one of the limbs of the Vedas. So every knowledge base on the planet that we know, including yoga, the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and everything literally comes from the Vedas. And in order to understand the Vedas better, you need the tools in your toolkit, like a language or like grammar or, sort of having the foresight to see things and so on and so forth. And in order to understand, and of course, the language, as you know, is one of the oldest languages on the planet, Sanskritam, or Sanskrit, as we popularly may be familiar with the term, right? Is everyone familiar with the term? Yes? Only one? Oh my God. Yes? Okay, so you're all kind of familiar, right? So with Sanskrit, which is where all the, including the Yoga Patanjali Sutras are written, which was given by Lord Shiva some, time unknown, and it trickled down through the agency of the sages, okay? And so that's why the importance of the tools to understand the Vedas. And one of the key tools for human transformation is Jyotish, or Vedic astrology as we know it. Okay, let me take you. Okay, so that's Jyotish Vedanga. So basically, it is one of the limbs of the Vedas to understand Vedic Vedas better. And Vedic astrology is how we know it in the West. So moving forward, um, one of the key things about being here is sort of being on this planet Earth and so on and so forth is because it's not by accident. It's not because it's a random phenomena, though a lot of non-believers will think so, but it's actually because there has been a grand plan, and everything about you is unique, including the twins. Like if you look at the lives of twins or triplets, in fact, just yesterday, where I work. By the way, my name, I'm going to introduce, I should have done that before. My name is Sonal Sachdeva, and I've been living in the UK for the past, I think, 2 decades. And I originally, of course, come from India, from Pune. I began my life as a computer software person, and then I veered into sort of a little bit of the documentary filmmaking, and eventually editing and or so on and so forth, and eventually um, Jyotish or Vedic astrology. I studied with one of the finest teachers, including Western psychological astrology. If some of you may be familiar with Liz Green, at the School of Psychological Astrology. So, right after that, I started to give talks and so on and so forth. And immediately after, I started to work with Watkins Bookshop. If you are familiar with on Cecil Court in London, it's one of the oldest esoteric bookshops. If you are ever in London, do come by, because it has a huge history. John Watkins, sort of started it, and so on and so forth. But coming back to the, because I work, frequently, I'm one of their Vedic consultants there, and I do readings as well. And so I chanced upon this person who is British, but he's Sikh origin, and he is one of the triplets. And he was telling me, and he wanted his chart, like, we were chatting, and he wanted his chart to be read. And I was like, okay, sure. He said, but I'm one of three, and we were all born literally at the same time. So, can you imagine the dilemma of any astrologer? What a nightmare it is, like if a child is born, but yet their lives are unique. Their, their intelligence will work differently. So, every person on this planet has a kind of like a plan for themselves. And when we talk about the plan, we are talking about a whole karmic plan. And of course, then you can well argue, like, how much then freedom do we have on altering that plan? Well, then we come to the idea or the fact of karma, which is inherent in the entire Vedas. You can't, the body that you've been given, your relationship with the body, your the fact that you're all here in the yoga festival, at this point of time, it is all to do very strong karmas, even including your health issues which you may be trying to overcome. There are people who live for like 20 years with, let's say, multiple sclerosis or various other ailments, and then bingo, one fine morning they've shed it off. So, what is that about? Why did it take 20 years? So, it's like time factor has come in. So, when we talk of karma, which we have been pent up for millions of lifetimes. So, it is said that Brahma, who's the creator for all of us, and he doesn't really, it's like a vast cosmic manufacturing process. Can you imagine everybody's karmas, billions and trillions of souls, and figuring out what their karmas is? Some of you may be familiar with the akashic records and stuff like that, right? So all this karma is very much within you, and it's within the cosmos. So whatever the cosmos is there, it is within you. But why are we born? Like you were expecting something, like a baby, expecting some things, the security and so on and so forth. But then there are some children who are pulled away from their parents. There are some children who go through traumatic experiences, childbirth. And for the child, including not just the mother, is a very traumatic process. And that is part of the karmic script. Yeah, we are all familiar with that, right? Or at least some of us may be familiar. And but that karmic imprint remains on the mind of the child throughout their life. And you may well argue, well, then maybe the C-section people, the babies have an easier time, but they don't, because even there, they carry a karmic imprint. Yeah. Is everybody familiar with the word karma? Yeah. So one of the key things why we are born, the surprise factor. Suddenly you're going through life, everything is working well, you've got perfect health, you're coming to this festival, everything is hunky dory, and then one may return, God forbid, and return, and like you had like a little break and you've twisted your ankle or whatever. So what is that? That's like the Rahu factor. That's like the big surprise element. It's like me being here, right? You were expecting, you were looking at the brochures, and I don't know if the brochures have been updated, and you were looking for Saurav on astronomy, and suddenly you were getting me, right? So what is that? That's like a huge surprise element. What's this she's doing there? And talking about karma. So the idea of karma is this, that we will be born again and again and again. It is said when Brahma sat for his meditation, 1,000,000 to trillion lifetimes in the blink of his eye just passed by. So that gives you an idea of how many times we have walked on this planet, or maybe even over here, how many lifetimes. And that karmic imprint is very much embedded in our mind, in our subconscious, but it's only a question of accessing it. And you may well argue or ask, then why are we not able to access it? Well, there are some people who do, and but I'm not going to digress. But let's come back to the idea of the surprise element. So, what is that surprise element in your life? Western astrologers would say, oh, it's Pluto, it's Neptune, it's Uranus, the surprise, hello. But actually, those planets are too far away in the universe for the human naked eye to be visible. And while Rahu and Ketu, of course, they are also not visible, but rest of the 7 planets are visible with the naked eye. You can all, if you have a decent telescope, or even on a good clear night, so on and so forth, you can see the planets. At least the sages saw it, and so their reasoning was whatever you can see, you use. But what about the things that you can't see, which is the surprise factor, which is why we come to the Rahu and Ketu. So the Rahu and Ketu, there is a myth associated with it, and I'm going to tell you a story. In fact, I'm going to tell you 2 stories so that you understand the whole concept of why we do karmic astrology or Jyotish Vedanga, because it is extremely karmic. It's like a healing tool in itself. So Rahu and Ketu, they were, if you notice, this is Angkor Wat. Angkor Wat, these are the old temples in Cambodia. And so here, it is said, has anyone visited this temple? Yeah, beautiful, huh? Brilliant. It's one of the oldest Vishnu temples on the planet. There are many, many old temples. If you go to this Indian subcontinent, there are tons of old temples. But this one is rather special because it has beautiful carved entire story in stone of the myth of the churning of the ocean milk for the nectar of immortality. Now, this particular episode coming from the Vedas is fundamental to all the Vedas. Literally, every single Puran you talk about, every single Upanishad you talk about refers to the Rahu and Ketu. And I will soon take you along with what is the significance of Rahu and Ketu, and how they literally during eclipse times, the sun and the moon are hijacked. They are gone. They are blotted for a few hours or few minutes. Literally, it's completely gone, right? So the ancient, if you see this temple, the churning of the ocean milk, there was a war. There was a war between the gods and the demigods. And the gods were always hankering for more power. But the demigods, they did not want to win, because obviously they are the asuras or the demigods. So they were like the evil, ones. But yet they needed their help. They wanted to enlist their help in order for this great production to begin. And this is a huge, was like a huge production. This is even before there was anything on this planet. And so the churning began. There's a whole churning. So Vasuki or Swarbhanu, one of the great massive serpents, was used as a rope. Mount Meru, if you can see it in the picture, was used as like the Mount Meru, okay? The wish fulfilling, the great Mount Meru was used as a pivot. And then they started the churning process. On one side, there were the demigods, on the other side, there were the gods, and then the whole churning began. But something happened. The whole production began to sink because they did not have a base. And so then we come to our next part, that what happens then, what did they do with the base? So finally, they had to bring in the great celestial tortoise. It's called the Kurma avatar. Kurma avatar is synonymous with the planet Saturn. And all of you must have heard of Saturn in some way, shape, or form, right? Other than just being a planet. So this great celestial tortoise, as you can see in the earlier, was brought in. You can see it right there. Was brought in. So the churning of the ocean began. And slowly, it became stable. But before anything was to come out, because they didn't know when the nectar of immortality, in what form it's going to come out, right? The gods had no idea. Through the tug of war, they started churning the ocean floor, and that's when the whole thing started to happen. The whole thing gathered momentum, but there's a lot of poisons that came out, lot of toxins that came out. And guess what? So everybody started panicking. So what happened? So they had to bring on the master of the universe, or all the master of the multiverses, Lord Shiva, who came and saw, okay, this has to be sort of handled with care. So what did he do? He drank all the poison. And what happened once he drank all the poison? His throat turned blue. And once his throat turned blue, he literally, turned blue. The whole of his body turned blue. Toxicity set in. This particular form of Lord Shiva is called Neelkantha Shiva. So there is a very interesting and a vital lesson in this, that whenever we come across some kind of toxins, and because every single Vedic mythology is actually not a myth, but it's like of huge importance. So they tend to bring in, like, they have huge relevance to what we are going through. So whenever we come across toxins, we all come across toxins. I don't need to even mention you, like everything, is sprayed or laminated. Everything has got some emitting power, which emits some kind of, chemicals and so on and so forth, which is actually toxic for the human body. And so it has, the skin can change coloration and so on and so forth. So similarly with Lord Shiva. So this particular form of Lord Shiva is called Neelakantha. Neelakantha in Sanskrit literally means blue throat. And this is one of the very healing, powerful healing. So if you do like a mantra, a sound mantra of Neelkantha Shiva, that actually can remove a lot of toxicity, and poisons, immunity disorders from your body. Anyway, so coming back, so he drank that. So then the whole production could move forward. And once it started to move forward, the many things started to come out before the nectar of immortality. One of the first things that started to come out was 14 particular jewels or treasures that came out. Lakshmi, Kaustuba. Now we all know the goddess of wealth, right? We all know we can't survive without the goddess of wealth. The great Mahalakshmi came out from the churning. Then Kaustuba, these are all the great gems that came out. And Parijata, this is like the wish fulfilling tree. There is in India, and even if you ever been to the Jagannath temple in Puri. There is this massive, ancient, it's been there for like, they say maybe thousands of years, as old as the Jagannath temple. And that particular tree has been there for a long time. And it's called the Parijata tree. It's like the wish fulfilling tree. And it's literally, there are aspects of, in your birth chart, there are aspects, some combinations, some yoga. Now, yoga, the word we can use in many, many ways, but yoga is also like a combination. You can have that wish fulfilling, kind of blessing in your chart. So coming back, so that was one of the great treasures that came. And then came Dhanvantari, the great god of Ayurveda. Dhanvantari came out. Then the moon came out. The wish fulfilling cows came out. And Kamdhenu, who's the wish fulfilling cows. And the great elephant Airavat came out. And so on and so forth. And the horse Uchashraiva came out. So these are the beautiful celestial horses. And so, and each of this has a huge significance. It has a huge planetary significance as well as it's very relevant to all the treasures that we use. Think about Dhanvantari. If you go to any Indian temple, they will always have some form of Dhanvantari, a statue of Dhanvantari almost always at the temple. And at various points, you do like a whole abhishekam to Dhanvantari. So, and that is for your health and so on and so forth. So all of these things came out. And then finally came out the nectar of immortality, right? But meanwhile, when the nectar of immortality started to come out, the demigods, and including the great serpent, Vasuki or Swarbhanu, whatever you can call it, because various Purans and texts have different associations with it. And so the Vasuki saw that, the great serpent saw that there's this nectar of immortality coming out, but they didn't know what it was, but they did suspect some foul play. So meanwhile, Vishnu, disguised as like a beautiful nymph, and started to, while they were having after the production, they were having like a meal, so an entertainment. And so he went to the demigods disguised as a beautiful damsel, an apsara, in order to, so that they may not drink it. But I think the Vasuki had already seen a little bit of Vishnu's deception, and so they started to quaff off some of that nectar of immortality. And then what happens? The luminaries, the sun and the moon, saw this, sort of like taking a little bit of the nectar, and then they went and complained to Vishnu. And Vishnu then, with his disgust, cut Rahu and Ketu. That is, the whole great serpent was cut, and then the head part became Rahu and the tail part became Ketu. So that is the whole story, and this is central. And Rahu and Ketu are 2 points. They are actually the nodes of the moon, and they are actually points, imaginary points in space, but they are central to whatever in your life there is. Everybody has a Rahu and Ketu in their birth chart, everyone. And they are instrumental in either, getting you to achieve something, or getting you to get rid of something, or getting you on the path of moksha. I mean, we all have all the swamis and swaminis are speaking, what are they talking about? Advaita Vedanta, where it is all about moksha, it's all about liberation. And that is the significator for that is Ketu, which is called the south node of the moon in Western astrology. And it is also the significator, it is called, traditionally it is called the Moksha Karaka. Moksha Karaka is like the great liberator, significator of the great liberation. So if you go in the direction of Ketu, let's move forward. So if you go in the direction of Ketu, then you will be liberated. But then also, all your attachments, you will have to get rid of. Everything you will have to get rid of. Your children, everything. And then you will have to walk It's like the yogis in the Himalayas. Have anyone come across any of the yogis, or at least heard about them or seen them? No? Anyone? Yes? Okay, there's, yeah, one or two, yes. So it's like the yogis, they go from door to door, they get food. All they have in their possession is those saffron ropes and literally a kamandalu, that is like a little container for water and for food. And literally, that's all they are meant to possess. Okay? And they go door to door. They're never supposed to, even the tree, under a tree, if they spend the night sleeping, they cannot go back to that same tree. That is the power of Ketu, because it will give you this kind of level of detachment, right? Which obviously in Advaitic terms we can say non-attachment, because there's a big difference between detachment and non-attachment. So, but the opposite is Rahu, because the Rahu is the north node of the moon, which is always the opposite. It's an axis point, and it is what creates the eclipses. Does anyone kind of do anything during eclipses ever? No? Yes? Huh? Sadhana? Anyone else? No one else is aware of the eclipses? Do you guys even notice when there's an eclipse? Yeah? Okay. So at the end of this, I will tell you what to do and what not to do during eclipses, and what sadhana specifically, which mantra will be very, very beneficial for you, right? Because eclipse is a very powerful time, because that's when Rahu and Ketu come into the picture, because the luminaries get involved. And when the luminaries like sun and the moon are involved, and they are literally hijacked by Rahu and Ketu, nothing will work. So it is a very powerful time, because where the gateway portals are open a little bit for you to access other world energies. But other world, I don't mean like, like other spiritual, I mean like the higher elevated energies, higher consciousness you can access. So it's a very, very powerful time. So coming back, so Rahu is the head. So with the head, it has like many, many, many heads. It's like Ravana. Is everybody familiar with the great Indian epic Ramayana? Yes. And the central protagonist, of course, was Sri Ram. But the great villain of the show, for which the whole thing happened, was Ravana, right? He went off to Sri Lanka, taking Sita, hijacking his wife. Now, Ravan had 10 heads. So it is said of Rahu that Rahu literally also has 10 heads. So if you have a very strong Rahu in your chart, that means you are like an overthinker, overachiever, do things too much. Sometimes you may even create blunders because it is an axis. Don't forget, So Rahu can give you a really sort of like great desire to achieve. It's wherever Rahu lands in your chart, there you will want to have more and more. You're never ever satiated. Just like Vasuki, the great serpent, he wanted to quaff off a little bit of that nectar of immortality. He did drink that, and that's why they became forever immortal, because that was the beauty of the nectar of immortality, that you will become forever immortal. And that's why the gods wanted it, and they didn't want the gods, the demigods, to have anything to do with it. But of course, there was a deception, and so often Rahu and Ketu can depict people cheating, especially Rahu. It shows where we go beyond our boundaries, where we aspire for great, it's like a political or geographical expansion is all very strong Rahu. It's like Queen Victoria, extremely powerful Rahu, because she literally owned the entire planet, practically, almost there. So that is really interesting, right? That Rahu can really egg you on to do all of this. So, but that is the power of Rahu. So Rahu will say, hey, come on, don't be satisfied go on, get more, do more, let's do more stuff. So that is the whole greed of Rahu. So it'll never let you stay satisfied. While Ketu will be like, give up. Let's go on the path of moksha. Let's go on the higher realms. So the great Ananta, the great god of Ananta, the fish god is associated, the Matsya avatar is associated with the great Ketu. And with Rahu, it is the great Varaha. The I don't know if you're familiar with the great avatar of Varaha, but Varaha has got the face of a pig, a boar, a wild boar, and a body of a human. So that is the idea of Rahu. Yeah. Any questions, anyone? Yeah, go on. No, Rahu is not the moksha karaka. Rahu is exactly the opposite. And no, it will not tell you anything. What it will tell you is that what you can achieve. Some people have a beautiful Rahu can give them Raj Yoga. Now, Raj Yoga is a very interesting term because here we are at the yoga festival and she's talking about Raj Yoga. What the hell is that? So, Raj Yoga literally in any birth chart means that Raj means kingly and yoga is a combination, right? But it's a combination of the planets, the grahas, and the signs in your chart and the house. So, certain placements of Rahu in dignity and so on and so forth can give you huge Raj Yoga. Like I mentioned of Queen Victoria, even Queen Elizabeth. Queen Victoria was probably one of the longest reigning queens, or maybe I think Queen Elizabeth II beat her to it. But it was like some ridiculous 60 years or some such thing, right? 59 years for Queen Victoria. So that for that you need a very strong Rahu because it's all about expansion across the planet. Whenever you cross anything foreign, you're going beyond your village, beyond your community, beyond the borders. You are talking about Rahu. Rahu comes into play very strongly. Our biggest stumbling block is foreign, anything foreign, infiltration of foreign. How interesting, here I am talking about the Indian Vedic stuff, and here you go on in Britain, and it's irony, right? But that is all Rahu. So one can say, I may have a strong Rahu, I probably do, so, and it all depends. Certain people have Rahu as their king of their chart. So that means they will have what? What will they achieve this lifetime? They will achieve huge spiritual success. But the success won't be easy. To answer your question, can Rahu give you that? If Rahu is your Atmakaraka, that is the king of your chart, significator of your Atma or your soul, every planet, every one of you here has a key planet that is like your karmic king. It will signify what your path in life is. And that for some people, it will be Rahu. And if Rahu is the one for you, then that means you will go through life wanting, so you will have so many desires when you're born. But the school of, as they say, the school of hard knocks in life will really flatten you out. And then you will wake up and say, okay, I'm now heading towards a much more spiritual path. That's when you start coming to the Advaita talks and all the conferences, yoga conferences and so on and so forth. But that is the power of Rahu. Then it will set you up. But that is, and while Ketu is like the complete opposite, okay, you want to go on a completely spiritual path, Ketu. But Ketu also rules, Rahu will rule huge machines like aircrafts and all. Because Rahu, again, the tattva, that is the element of Rahu, is the air element, very, very strong air element. And while the tattva of Ketu is a very strong fire, it's like a laser beam of fire. So people in the military, soldiers, and so on and so forth will have very strong Ketu, right? Scorpio people, yes, go on. Okay. So then we have to then go into the more of the elemental, which we will go into tomorrow, right? But in very good question. So the thing with Ketu is it's like a thin, very strong, concentrated fire. Now, what do you think? Let's a little bit digress a bit. What do you think? What do you think of the sun? Do you think sun is like fireball? Yes, it gives us light, right? So it's like very strong. It's almost like one of the key sources of fire, right? And that fire is often associated also with the fire in our belly. We all need the Agni. We all need, if we did not have fire, we would not survive on this planet. Let's face it, right? So we need the sun. And then we talk also, when we talk of the sun, but the sun is like a huge source, but we need something that we can access. We need that energy that we can access it easily. So for that, we need Mars, because it's our energy levels, what we desire, how we fight, all that is Mars. But when it comes to Ketu is also very strong fire, because it will give you the intuitive ability. It will give you the divine intuition. And so you see, you need the divine intuition. When you look at the fire, you need fire for manifesting everything. Anything spiritual, you need the fire. You need the fire in the belly. You need the fire. Without fire, if we just had water, we would all be like, kind of little amoebas, like, you see these little jellies, right? Like little silicone jellies filled with water. So we'll be like little amoebas like that if it was just water. But that fire element will help us. It's like, it will help us with all the electrical impulses in our brain and so on and so forth. So all that is very strong fire. We need the fire. Without the fire, we will not survive. And so that fire aids us into spiritual path, because it will show us which direction we can go to. Are you getting, do you see that? I think it'll be more clear once we go. Yeah. But Ketu is very, very strong fire. But you're right, by its nature, it is very strong fire. But the irony is that Ketu's home, every planet has its home. It's like, where do you feel most comfortable in? You feel most comfortable in a certain sign. Like sun feels most comfortable in Leo and in Aries, where it is very elevated. It's like the king, right? The sun is like the king, while Ketu feels very comfortable in its own home, which is Pisces, which is the last sign of the zodiac. And Pisces is, of course, as you said, a water sign, but it is the final ending. But Ketu is like a combination, So there is a little bit subtle, even though the planet itself or the point itself is very strong fire, but it feels most comfortable in Pisces, which is its natural home. We come to that, how we transform, and how its other home is also Scorpio. It's got work cut out in Pisces. Its home is another water sign, Scorpio. So if you have a very strong Scorpio, you'll be brilliant with computers. Anyone who works in computers or anything? No one? Yeah, okay. Yeah, he's got strong Ketu. Yeah. So anyway, so I will come back a little bit with more details on that. Yeah. So, okay, let's move forward. So we got that, right? Now we get another little, yes, go on. Yes. That, so when you say you're Scorpio, you've got Sun in Scorpio. Is that what you mean? Yes? See, now this is another Rahu factor I'm bringing in. All of you thought that you were the sun sign, and that is what you are, right? So we come back. Let's do a little thing. Okay, I move forward, just skip a little bit, and we come back to this now. Who is when's your birthday? 1st November, and you're a Scorpio, right? Aha. So, but by the sidereal zodiac, okay, by the Indian sidereal zodiac, this may come as a surprise. You're a Libra. Yeah, your sun in Libra. So now this is a really interesting thing for all of you, because I was now going into the other mythology, which is, why is the Western astrology different to the Eastern or sidereal? Does anybody want to give me when they're like, she's established, now she's found out she's sun in Libra? Yes, yes, go on. Yes, you have your hand up.
I'm 24th of January, so I thought I was Aquarius. Now it's
There you go. What are you? Capricorn. Sun in.
Scorpio rising, so that must be something else.
Yes, depending on the degrees. Yeah. So that's a big surprise. See, another surprise. So you're getting a lot of surprises today. At the end of the day, you'll be like, wow. Yes. What is? Yeah. It is not the Indian version. It is, as far as I'm concerned, it's the only version. Okay, but we will come to that. Okay, we will come to that. Let's go why there. So you can see that the zodiacal dates are different, right? If you notice, can everybody see this? Yeah, yeah. Anyone? Yeah. So now, what is this discrepancy? Why are we getting the tropical dates, which we have always known? You've always thought all your life, practically, your sun in Scorpio. Now, suddenly, I'm telling you, wow, your sun in Aries. Libra. Sorry, sun in Libra. Beg your pardon. Sun in Libra. Wow, what's going on here? So, anyone else want to have a go that they thought they were certain sign, but they are not? Yes, go on.
And that makes me Gemini. I don't think I'm anything like Gemini. I think I'm very Cancerian.
Well, we don't know where the rest of your chart is, and you don't know what Gemini is about. You know, there are many, many nuances about Gemini. The sun sign is only one big factor, you know, but there is two other factors. There's the moon sign, and there's also your rising sign, and all three make up your personality. So it's not just one. And if you're a Gemini, you love living in cities. You don't? So maybe your rising sign is Virgo. We don't know. You know, we don't know. Because Gemini is a very, very strong. The sun is very strong in Gemini. Extremely powerful. Anyway, yes? Yeah. No. No, it won't. We don't know because we don't know the degrees. I can just tell you the sun sign. So your sun sign is Virgo. Yeah. And it's still Virgo, right? Ah, okay, okay, okay. Oh, very nice. You, isn't it nicer to believe? All my biases coming in? No, no, I'm just joking. That was a joke, by the way. Sorry? Yeah. 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 I mean, we have to see the chart, but I was coming to why this discrepancy. as you will see, there is a huge discrepancy. And you could well argue that, oh no, like the lady there, I don't know your name, but she's like, oh no, I'm nothing like a Gemini. But we don't know, because there are so many other factors in the chart. You know, there is a moon sign which will probably color everything. But maybe she's got moon on her ascendant, and then it totally will color her entire worldview. Yeah, maybe she's Sagittarius rising, and that will be totally different. Yeah. So, yeah. So, yes, yes.
So I'm a Taurus and I stay a Taurus.
Brilliant.
That's right.
Yeah.
Look at my mum and dad, and my mum is a Taurus and my dad is a Gemini, and actually it makes my mum an Aries and my dad a Taurus. And I'm like, that makes more sense.
Yeah. Thank you.
But I assume my moon sign and my rising sign don't change.
Yeah.
Because I know what they are, they're no Capricorn. But they won't change. And I look at my children as well and go,
Yeah. Yeah. So your father, did you say was he was Taurus, but he's Aries?
Gemini, but he's Taurus, and me and my father are much more alike than me and my mother. And she becomes an Aries.
Oh, she becomes an Aries? Whoa, she must be a bit of a spitfire there.
I'm not alike. I'm much more like
Yeah. But of course, because Aries is a totally different sign. Yes, but indeed. But there is something like you have to understand that some signs, some sun signs, it's like anything, right? Some people are much taller, some people are shorter, some people are kind of medium. You know, it's all shapes and sizes, right? So similarly with the sun, in some signs, the sun is super joyous. You know, like the sun in Gemini is quite happy, but and the sun in Aries is quite elevated because it's in its exaltation. It feels like a king, you know. But of course, the other things where it lands in the chart will color the entire thing. But the sun in Aries will be extremely elevated. They will know their mind. Your mother cannot be told, "Hey, do this or do that." She won't suffer fools gladly. Not at all, right? Yeah. So, yes, somebody had a question here? No? Yeah. No, not at all. It varies a lot. It's completely different. Only the signs, we even have our own names. Like Aries is Mesha. I haven't got them written here. But when I teach people, I run like beginners class and elementary class. So when I teach people, I often say that you have to know the Sanskrit names. It's like Patanjali Yoga Sutras, you know, the asanas, downward dog position. You're changing the whole flavor of the asana. You know, it's not, you're not going to get a benefit if you say, you know, a cat pose and downward dog and all. You know, it's not, it won't, you know, you've got to address it the way it is, you know. Of course, my favorite asana, the Shava asana. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about this particular myth. What happened? What happened to the zodiacs? Some 70 or 60,000 years ago, some staggering number, the zodiacs were perfectly aligned. They were the same, right? So we wouldn't have this conversation. Oh, I'm sun in Scorpio, but actually I'm sun in Libra. It were perfect in alignment. So what went wrong? What went wrong is there was a huge I will come back to the astronomy, which is fascinating, but the key for the entire planet Earth is to do, the trick is in the poles. You know, the north poles, the pole star. Anybody heard of the pole star? Yeah. So the pole star essentially is instrumental. But what is about the pole star? So there used to be a great one of the first man, as they call it, Manu, his name was, and he was Swayambhu. That means he was like he was created very first man. It's like Adam. So we have like our own Adam version of it, right? And so that is Manu. And so he was a son of Brahma. And then he had two more sons like Priyavrata and Utpanada. And so, these had their wives Suruchi and Suniti. And then they had their own sons. So each of the wives had two sons, and Suniti's son was Dhruva. Now, this is where it gets really interesting because Dhruva it's called the Dhruva Tara in the Indian mythology. So the story goes like this. And Dhruva wanted to sit on the lap of his father, and but Uttama, his other favorite wife, son, went and sat very freely while Dhruva was feeling really dejected, and he went running to his mother saying, "Why can I not sit on my father's lap?" And he had like a huge kingdom and so on and so forth. And so Suruchi, the other favored wife, said, "Only you're not born my son, so you can't sit, because you're not my son." And of course, we all know who the favored wife is. So he got really dejected and upset. So he said, "I'm going to go off and do what I like doing. I'm going to find a way of making my father love me." So eventually, he went into the forest at a very young age, and then he gave up everything and he started doing penance to Lord Vishnu. And some many years passed, and finally Mahavishnu appeared. So meanwhile his mother came, everybody came, but yet his concentration was so focused on getting to Mahavishnu that he did not deviate. His mother begged him to come back to the kingdom. He didn't listen. So, and the spot where he was meditating for Lord Vishnu, there were other 7 Sapta Rishis, 7 great saints. Now, the idea of the 7 great saints, if you look up in the night sky, you can see the Bear constellation, and you can literally see all the 7 stars, the key stars. And so they were nearby and they heard him meditating and all this commotion going on. They were like, "What's going on?" So they actually helped him to, give techniques and so on and so forth to bring forth Mahavishnu. Finally, Mahavishnu, but meanwhile, Indra also got upset. He's like, because Indra gets really upset. He's like the god of the gods, and he is a little bit of a bolshi, like, "I'm the greatest" and all that. So if anybody gets even a little bit more powerful through penances or all that, he gets really upset, right? Because he thinks they are going to take over his kingdom. So in the heavens. So he also sent somebody to distract Dhruv, but Dhruv was totally focused on getting to Mahavishnu. And eventually, Vishnu did appear to him, and he did say, "Okay, you are my most favored, and he granted him the boon that you will have a forever, in the sky, you will forever be known," and so on and so forth, and you will have the steadfastness for eternity. So when you look at the whole of the earth, the tilt of the earth, it's like the earth is being pulled towards the pole star, right? It's like a magnetic pull. And that is what is called the Ayanapsha. It's a little tricky word, but literally that's what it means. So basically, the whole of the earth is tilting and is being pulled through. And because of that, there is a wobble that happens on the earth. So as and when the time passed, the whole wobble happened, and it kept happening, and because of that it kept increasing. The whole of the stars and all that started to move a little bit, like little by a degree in every like 80 years or so. And so now, so the whole of the zodiac went a little bit kilter. So that's why the tropical zodiac as we know it is much more, as you can see the patterns that are formed with the Dhruv Tara. So these are the Sapta Rishis, right? If you see, these are all the rishis, stars associated with the rishis, the great saints, and then they are all moving towards the pole star, which is the northern star. And so, if you see the in spring, summer, look at the pattern it is forming. It's like the swastika, right? Everybody familiar with the swastika, right? So it is like a pattern that is forming in the sky at various points, when you map it literally in spring, summer, winter, and fall. So basically, the Dhruv Tara then became the instrumental reason for the tilt of the earth, where the magnetic pull, imaginary star is being pulled to the earth's axis, and it wobbles because of that, and because of that, the whole of the zodiac started to shift. And then the seasonal zodiac, like it is there in Vishnu Puran, that even in the seasonal, in the season, we have, like if you want to predict, let's say, rainfall and so on and so forth, what will you use? You will use the Western zodiac. But when it comes to personalities, your karmas in life, fine tune all the remedies and so on and so forth, you will use the sidereal zodiac. Is everybody clear? So you will use all of that, yeah? Any questions? So this particular, yes,
So I was born in October,
yes,
but I was always told I was premature.
yeah.
So do I go by my actual date of birth, or do I go by when I should have been born?
The actual date of birth.
Actual.
Always the actual. Because the other one is just potential.
Right.
Yeah. So always actual. So so this particular phenomena, I won't bore you with too much of the precession, but this is the astronomy behind it. You can even read it somewhere, but this phenomena where the whole zodiac shifts. Currently, we are approximately 23.78 something degrees off, and that is why you're getting that particular that table, because the degrees are off. That's why the dates are off. Is everybody kind of, yeah? So then you can well ask, then what is the use of the tropical zodiac? It is excellent for predicting, let's say, earthquakes and so on, and it's a great tool for meteorology and for various other seasonal things. But when it comes to human interactions, your relationships, your children, your path, your path that you want to take in life in terms of spiritual path, it is the sidereal zodiac which works, only because it has been always used. And in the Shastras, and we always go by what is Shastra Pramana, that is what is in the books. So the monumental work of Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, that is Parashara's text, monumental text, which is like a Bible in Vedic astrology, is always referred to the sidereal dates, always. But that's not to say, like I said, they don't use tropical, but for other things. Yeah. Is everybody okay with that? So now let's come to a little bit about the karma factor. So we can skip all of this, right? So anyone? Okay, here's another thing I want to just bring. Has everybody heard of the saying "Yatha pinde tatha brahmande"? Yatha brahmande tatha pinde. No. So basically, it means as above, so below. So below, as above. Everyone's heard of that, right? So the origin of this is from Yajurveda in Sanskrit, and it literally means, what does it really mean? Because it means like what? Like as we are above, we are below, and as we are below, we are like what? Well, it's not even making sense. So basically, we are all heard of the chakras, right, in our body, right? Did you know that all the chakras that you are made of, all the vortexes of energy that you have, are actually connected to the cosmic consciousness of bigger cosmic bodies? which are beyond. And this is not me saying, right? It is there. When you, anybody seen this? Like this Big Bang thing and the supernova bursting stars. Anyone familiar with this? This is just astronomy. You can Google it, find it. You know, NASA will have tons of these bursting stars and all. So what they found was that the material, you know, when these stars burst and all these phenomena happened, the particular material they found was actually the element table. Anybody familiar with it? You remember the element table in school? Carbon and all those like ions and all those, all that chemistry part of it, the periodic table. Remember that? Oh my god, I remember slogging out, remembering all those names and all that. So uranium, plutonium, all that. So all of those elements, phosphorus, calcium, all of that which is present in the human body, they found was actually present in the cosmos when those stars burst. So literally we are, as they say, we are made of stardust. We actually are. Because it is in the Shastras, it is in the Shastra Pramana. That is, it is in the Vedic text. So we will never deviate from the Vedic text. As you may be familiar, when you attend a lot of the Advaita Vedanta and, you know, the way of inquiry and even the Yoga Patanjali Sutras, always we come back to the text for the source. So we are 100% made of stardust. So that explains a lot of things, but that also opens up like huge possibilities that we can actually then access other multiverses, actually can access other places on this universe and other energies. So we can actually reach the gods, but they don't seem to be helping anyone, do they? You know, they're kind of like sleeping for some. So what's the problem there? What's going on? So, okay. So then we come to the elements. Now, elements is also another part of the whole our bodies, right? But we won't go into elements, because when I go into the elements, we'll go into the chakra system and so on and so forth. And I think, yeah, okay. So we'll cover this tomorrow. But essentially, all of this in Ayurveda, we have it. That is all of the, that we can map all our chakras through the planets onto all the multiverses. So there are literally all the universes, all different lokas or the worlds are within us. I know it sounds crazy, right? Sounds familiar or not? Or crazy, like completely gosh. Yeah, it's very cool. So now, so where does all this Vedanga Jyotish come into the picture? Like I said, there are 6 auxiliary disciplines associated with Vedic learning. Now, everything about the Vedas, Sanskrit is like a perfect language. There is no mistakes. There may be slight modifications, but they are man-made modifications. But when the saints gave you all the Shastras, all the Rig Veda and the Yajur Veda and the Atharveda is where all the yogas and all the medicines, all the Ayurveda comes in. Yajur Veda is all about chanting and, you know, incantations. Rig Veda is all about the fire ceremonies and the mantras and all that. The Gayatri mantra, we are all familiar with the Gayatri, right? Yes? Did you know you cannot sing the Gayatri? Did you know that? Yeah. So when people start chanting, who's that famous, maybe putting my head into hot water here, that famous American singer who comes and she sings the Gayatri mantra loud. Does anyone? What's her name? Yeah, thank you. Deva Pramal. Yes, thank you. So, but that is, you know, it's really karmic to do not, it's not very nice to do that. I mean, it is prohibited because Gayatri is something, number one, you need the Diksha for Gayatri. Diksha meaning you need to be initiated into the Gayatri mantra. That's number one, because it's one of the oldest prayer coming from the Rig Veda. The one of the basic Gayatris you can do, but again, singing it loudly as if it's like some kind of like, you're biking and singing the Gayatri in a big, sort of auditorium is not really the ethos. Rig Veda did not endorse that, and I don't think we can misuse it and take it lightly, because it's extremely powerful. And with the bejas you can add, if you are initiated in, it becomes like a very powerful tantric prayer. There is nothing you cannot achieve with the Gayatri. That is the power of the Gayatri. Yeah. So anyway, coming back, so the each of the disciplines like the mantras and so on and so forth, these are all the toolkits that we need to understand the Vedic knowledge better. And so we have like the Vedanga is derived from the Veda. So the 6 auxiliary disciplines really help us to understand ourselves, our body. This is like the ideal man, the Vitruvian man, as they call it. Anyone heard of the term Vitruvian man? Yeah. So the ideal, what's this, the famous artist,
Leonardo.
yes. So he drew that beautiful image. I think I may have it here somewhere. So yeah, there it is. That's the one. Yeah. That's not that particular, but that's the Vitruvian man towards the end. So this is nothing but the ideal man. This is called the Kal Purusha. So literally with the chakras, you have the power of connecting it to the other worlds. Literally, you have the power of connecting it, but via the agency of the planets. So that is the power of planets, and that is the power of Jyotish. Yeah, because it is one of the Vedangas. I will come back to the other Vedangas, but they're not really important for our talk relevance today. So the Kal Purusha is nothing but the great body of Vishnu, and where all the signs are mapped. So literally each of the signs and the planets also get mapped to the chakras as well, which is pretty phenomenal, yeah? So you can see this is like a fundamental thing. Now these are, if you see here, Aries, Vrishabha, Mithuna, these are the Sanskrit names. And these names have huge power. Don't think like, oh, I'm an Aries. But if you say Mesha, just saying Mesha, if you have moon in Mesha or sun in Aries, if you just say Surya in Mesha, it will have so much effect. It's like a mantra in itself. Every word, every syllable in Sanskrit is a mantra. And the mantra is, what is the job of the mantra? To alter your consciousness in every single way. And there is nothing that you can achieve on this planet with a particular mantra. Nothing. Everything is achievable just by the power of the mantra. Because the mantras are like incantations, but they are sacred because they've been used and given by the rishis and used by the rishis. So they are literally power packed. So if you go through the signs, just anybody want to go through the signs one by one? Yeah. Okay. So let's say Mesha. So that is Aries. Okay. Vrishabha. That's Taurus. And Mithuna. That's Gemini. Karkata. Yeah. Cancer. Simha. That's Leo. What's next? Kanya. Yeah. Virgo. And Tula. Libra. Vrishchika. Scorpio. Dhanu or Dhanush, as we say. Sagittarius. Yeah. Makara, which is Capricorn. So somebody said they found they are not sun in Aquarius but sun in Makar. So you have sun Surya in Makar. So just Makar is, and all these names have huge meaning to them. And we come to Kumbha, which is feet, which is Aquarius. And then we have finally Meena, which is Pisces, the very last sign. Right? So, any questions? Anything? So, now I will give you a very simple thing, right? Everybody familiar with mantras at all? Anyone's done any mantras ever? Yeah, you have, right? So I'll give you a very simple technique, right, of invoking all the signs. And it is very simple. It's literally, you said Mesha, you just say Om Meshai Nama. Can we say that? Perfect. Then similarly, Om Vrishabha Nama. Yeah. And Om Mithunai Nama. Om Karkatai Nama. Om Simhai Nama. Om Kanyai Nama. Om Tulai Nama. Om Vrishtikai Nama. Om Dhanushai Nama. Om Makarai Nama. Om Kumbhai Nama. Om Meenai Nama. So, how do you feel? So,
Sorry, so you do all of them. Doesn't matter what sign you are, you still do all of them.
no, you can do all of them because remember, we have all these signs in our chart and they are all mapped to our body as well. So, we all have these signs. But if you were to pick your moon sign, your rising sign, which is the most important, and your sun sign, so you have three options. So, and you have time till tomorrow to figure out which of these three you are. So you can always get me. I've got my laptop here. I've got the software. I can tell you what's your sun sign, what's your moon sign, what's your lagna, as we call it, or your rising sign. So you have three options. So ideally, you're meant to say for your lagna and your moon sign, and that is a very powerful one. And of course, the sun too. So you have three choices. You can pick and choose. That's pretty good going, yeah? To activate your rising sign. And if you activate so everybody will say, what about sun? What about sun? Of course, that's what we'll be doing tomorrow. The tripod of life, sun, moon, and rising sign. So what about the sun? But yes, but you as a baby, when a baby is born, ejected out from, from the canal, and you can see the head coming off, and the first breath the baby takes, it's your rising that comes. It's not the sun sign. Because remember, when we do the rising sign, when we calculate the rising sign, we need the time of the birth. Everybody getting this? Yeah? Because, yes, go on. No. No, not at all. Yeah. I won't be using the Western at all. Yeah. Yes, it's simple. Not the date. See, only for the sun sign you will have the date, right? But for the rest of the planets, you will not have the date. For the rest of the planets, if you have the chart, all you have to do is see what degree your moon is what degree your rising sign is, and then subtract 23 or approximately, let's just make a round figure, 24 degrees. Take it back. Yeah. But we don't know the degrees though. Yeah. We don't know the degrees of the other two. With sun, it is easy because you're born, you saw that chart, right? That list. So with sun, it is easy to figure out which it's your birthday. But with rising sign, it's your intelligence. So you can say, like, what's she going on about now? Suddenly rising sign. But the rising sign is where when the baby takes the first breath. So when you're born and you've just been spat out, well, literally it feels like that, right? So whether you've been pulled out with a forceps or however, the fact is that the first breath of the child is the time when actually the child comes into the world, right? And that's why they hit the child, and I can imagine, so that he's able to take the first breath. And that is the time is when we fix the ascendant. And once we fix the ascendant, that remains for you for the rest of your life. So you can't go around saying, oh yeah, can I change that? And it doesn't work like that. We spend a lot of time rectifying a chart just to get the ascendant correct. And there are many, many rules for it. But getting the chart right is crucial. Getting the rising sign right is absolutely the most important exercise. Yeah. So feel free to catch me today. Yeah. Then we have it's a different trajectory we have to take. We have to then do a horary chart, like ask a question to the universe and figure out, we have ways, means, but it will help, but it's a process. It's not an easy one, but it's a separate trajectory altogether. But it'll help if you just know whether you were born in the morning, approximate, like morning, midnight. Everybody will remember that, though. Whether it's like morning or we were having tea or, they were serving, coffee or croissant or whatever. So, it's kind of, it was raining. Well, in the UK, it's always raining. So it's kind of in India, at least you can get away. Oh, it was raining, and so it was the monsoon season had just begun. You can get away with that. So, but so the sun and the moon literally form like the pillar, and the third pillar is, of course, your rising sign. So this is like a little preview for tomorrow. So the rising sign will also fix your intelligence, how your mind behaves. So if you have Rahu on your ascendant, remember Rahu story for those who came join in late. Remember Rahu? So if you have Rahu on your rising sign, on your ascendant, in your lagna, which is also the Sanskrit word for lagna, so literally you will be like, oh my God, I cannot stop thinking. I'm overthinking everything. So the nature of your intelligence and your discriminating abilities will be ascertained by the rising sign. Anyone, any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't have an exact time. My mother sort of gave me 2 hour space.
But 2 hours is when the rising sign changes. It's easy to do though. Yeah, it's not very immensely difficult. Yeah. Okay. So let's do, anyone has any more questions, or we can just do a couple of more slides. Let's do something on karma. We come back on the karma. Okay. So what is it about the karma, human suffering? We'll just do one or two things. Yes, 10.
Been following Western astrology, so when they say there's a Mercury retrograde coming or eclipses, is it the same?
Yes, but good question. So I'll give you an example, right? Now, when people say Saturn return or Mercury, everybody familiar with the word Saturn return? Yeah, everyone, yeah? Anyone who isn't familiar? You're not familiar? You're not familiar. Okay, so Saturn return, it's like become almost like a common parlance. Saturn return is when transiting Saturn, because all the planets, remember, are moving. And when the transiting Saturn comes back to the same position as your natal birth chart, as it is as you were born with, is called Saturn return. And typically it happens between the ages of 28, sometimes even earlier, 27 to about 30, 31. So those are the prime ages that it happens, depending on how far in the zodiac Saturn is. So that is a very important pivotal time. But answering your question, the Mercury retrograde, Mercury retrograde is, we do not give that much of importance to the Mercury retrograde cycle. It is powerful. Any retrograde cycle, don't get me wrong, is extremely powerful for redoing things. But that is same true with Venus and Mars. Now we have a Mars one coming up in November, which is Mars retrograde cycles is pretty potent, right? And so with Mercury also it is potent, but it typically happens 3 times a year anyway. So it's kind of okay. But what is interesting is we read the Saturn return very differently. We will read it from the moon, not from Saturn return. So we will not consider Saturn's position to the natal Saturn, that is transiting Saturn in the sky. It's coming onto your your Saturn in your birth chart. But instead, we consider the moon sign. We will look at the moon sign and we will see where the Saturn is transiting. If it is in the same house as the moon, and then you go like, whoa, you're having a big, rapid, massive change for those years. 2.5 years is the length of time Saturn is in one sign. 2.5. So let's say somebody's moon is, let's say, in Aries, right? So what is the sign behind Aries? Anyone? Just Pisces? Oh, you guys are good. Pisces? Sure? Yes? Okay. So Pisces. And what is the sign after Aries? Yes. Okay. So these 3 signs, let's say the moon is in Aries, and then you have Saturn creeping in Pisces, which it is going to go next year in April, right? Saturn is going to be in Pisces. So then we have a problem. And it is not really a problem per se, but it is time for us to wake up and change our complete direction of our life. Because it's like a Hoover, right? It's like a good old Henry Hoover. Everything will come, and then I love hoovering. Anyway, it's my pet activity. So I've got strong Saturn. So hey, a cleaning is part of Saturn, right? So hoovering is all about Saturn. So when you think of the Hoover, think of Saturn. When you think of Saturn, think of Hoover. Because everything that you don't need in your life will be whipped out, taken away from you. It's like a cleansing process. You don't need that. This is not going to work for you. You don't need this. This is not, you're conflicted in this. All emotional, everything will come to the surface. It's like a whole cleansing process will begin. And it'll begin in Pisces. And you'll wonder what's going on. You know, it's like, so 2.5 years in Pisces, starting in um, April next year. So 2.5 years from then, for everybody who's got moon in Aries or moon in Pisces, the process has started to happen now. And then it'll come to Aries after 2.5 years. That's another 2.5 years in Aries. And so the moon is like, oh my God, this is like full throttle ahead, you know. And then the next 2.5 years will be in Taurus, and that's another 2.5 years. So totally, if you add up, the period is 7.5 years. That's a long time in anybody's life. And that happens once in 30 years. In 30 years, Saturn will come approximately 30 years, 29, 1/4, whatever. And it will remain around your moon, hovering around your moon for a period of 7.5 years. Not all 7.5 are going to be like really on the edge, but they will be quite intense. Yeah. So big transformations. Any questions so far? Sorry?
Would you recommend any practices to help surrender into
Yes. Yes. I will give you the eclipse one tomorrow as well. And yes, there are. There are a lot of mantras, very simple mantras, very powerful mantras, lot of things you can do. But Saturn is the karmic indicator, key karmic indicator. You know, you have to make sure everything in your environment, all the karmas will come to you at this point of time. So you have to go with a feeling or with the ethos of surrender. You cannot be sort of arrogant and say, what can I do? How bad? You can't go in with that attitude. You have to open your mind and go with a spirit of surrender. And then things will sort of help you. You know, it can tell you which direction to go to. But it's a pivotal time. It is also a classic time when our parents, grandparents pass away. If you are age 30, let's say you have, your moon, you have moon in a certain sign, then the first Sade Sati, as they call it, it can happen any time, depending on where your moon is placed. You could be born in a Sade Sati, which is a Saturn's transit to the moon. So you could be born with a sun and moon, Saturn and moon conjoining each other in a yoga, which is what we call conjunction or yoga, because they are in an aspect with each other. So then, then it comes with a different set of issues. So, but it's forbearance and patience and the mantras. Yes.
I understand we're in the Lionsgate portal at the minute. It's actually with Sirius. How would that translate into?
I think it's called Brahma Vidya. Yeah. And Brahma Vidya is know about the kalpas and the yugas, study of the yugas, and so on and so forth. So currently we are in the Kali Yuga. Have anybody heard of this term Kali Yuga? Yeah. So there are 4 yugas, and right now we are in the Kali Yugas. But we are in the very rosy period of Kali Yuga. Why do I say rosy? Because, hey, things have not got as bad. You have not seen the worst that can happen. The evil that will be unleashed on the planet will be like, but then you and I won't be there anymore. Because it will happen. Because Kali Yuga has got thousands of years still left. So we won't be there unless we come back. Then maybe we'll experience it. But, let's hope not. I would not want to be here. So yeah, so it is a pivotal time. But the beauty about Kali Yuga, they say, is answering your question is about the portals opening up is that there is no yuga, and there are 4 yugas, but there is no better yuga for japa, for helping you. Japa is like a chant for mantra chants, which will give you phenomenal result as Kali Yuga. It's like one of the best, yeah, for making spiritual progress. Yeah. Okay, guys. Thank you very much.